Fan mot fan too. I found out he was trying to take my house while I was choosing my mother's casket. That's the sentence that still makes my throat tighten, even now. Even after the judge said my name like a verdict, and the courtroom went quiet. Because grief is supposed to be the heaviest thing you carry. But that week, grief wasn't the only weight on my chest. It was Tuesday morning when the hospice nurse called and said, "She's changing. You should come." I drove the roads, hands shaking on the wheel, the sky over Columbus a flat winter gray. My mother's little ranch house sat exactly the way it always had. Same blue shutters, same wind chimes tapping softly against the porch rail, like they were trying to keep time with a heart that was slowing down. Inside, everything smelled like lavender lotion and weak tea. Mom's eyes fluttered open once when I leaned close and said, "Hey, I'm here." She tried to smile. She didn't have the strength. The nurse stepped out. My husband, Evan, didn't come with me. He said he couldn't handle hospitals. He said he'd meet me later. I sat by Mom's bed and watched the rise and fall of her chest, the small struggle of each breath. And I kept telling myself I could hold it together. I could be the responsible one, the calm one, the woman who did paperwork and made calls and handled the ugly logistics so nobody else had to. Because that had been my role for years, in our marriage and in my family. When Mom finally slipped away that night, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, a long exhale, and then stillness. I remember the nurse's hand on my shoulder. I remember the fluorescent light humming above me. I remember staring at my mother's hands and thinking, absurdly, that they looked smaller than they used to. And then, my phone buzzed, a notification from the county recorder's portal. Document recorded. At first I thought it was spam. Then I saw our address. My address, typed in black letters like a label on a box. My stomach dropped so hard I felt nauseous. I clicked. And there it was, in sterile legal language that made betrayal look clean. A notice of interest filed against my home, signed by Evan, signed by me, too. Except I hadn't signed anything, not that day, not any day. The nurse was saying something, asking if I had someone who could drive me home. But my ears were ringing. My fingers were numb. I stared at that PDF like it was a hallucination, like grief had cracked my brain. Evan was claiming an interest in my property, the property I bought before I met him, the property I had kept in my name, on purpose, because I'd watched my mother get burned once by a charming man with big promises and small follow-through. I'd promised myself I'd never be careless, but I'd underestimated something. I'd underestimated how patient Evan could be when he smelled an opportunity. I walked out of the hospice into air so cold it stung my cheeks. In the parking lot, under a buzzing streetlight, I called him. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said softly, like he'd been waiting. "My mom just died," I whispered, a beat. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. I'm coming." Then I said the words that changed the temperature of my whole life. Why is there a notice of interest on my house, with my signature? Silence. Too long. Then he exhaled, like I was the one making things difficult. "Claire," he said, "not tonight. We'll talk." "No," I said, voice shaking. "Right now." He sighed again, the same sigh he used when I asked him to do dishes, or pick up his own dry cleaning, or stop buying things on credit cards he promised he would pay off. "That's just paperwork," he said. "It's temporary." "Temporary for what?" "For security," he said. "For us." My blood went cold. What did you do? He lowered his voice like he was being kind. I protected what we built, he said. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly. Emotional. That word, that small weapon. I could feel the grief still sitting in my chest like a stone, but now something else rose beside it, sharper. You forged my signature, I said. He didn't deny it. He said, You've been distracted. You would have signed if you understood. I gripped my phone so hard my hand hurt. I'm going to my mother's house, I said. I'm staying there tonight. What? His tone snapped, the softness gone. No. Come home. Home, I repeated, and the word felt strange, like he didn't deserve it. Claire, he said, don't do this. We have arrangements. Arrangements. I didn't understand then, not fully, but I felt the shape of something behind his words. Something planned. I drove to my mother's house and slept on her couch in the living room. I didn't really sleep, not even for a full minute at a time. I kept waking up to the empty hallway, to the sound of the wind chimes, to the knowledge that my mother was gone, and my husband was doing something. In the morning, I made coffee in the kitchen, where Mom used to hum hymns under her breath. I stared at the counter where she rolled out dough for pies. I tried to breathe. Then I opened my laptop. I pulled up the document again. The signature line looked like mine at first glance. The curve of the C, the slant of the L, the little flick at the end. But there were tiny differences. The pressure was wrong. The rhythm was wrong. It was like someone had traced me. I felt nauseous again. I Googled the term notice of interest and quitclaim and spousal claim until my eyes burned. Every page I opened made my fear sharper. It didn't matter that the house was solely in my name. If he could create enough confusion, enough legal friction, enough doubt, it could become a fight I didn't have energy for. Because my mother's funeral was in 3 days. 3 days. And while I was calling the pastor and choosing flowers and trying to decide whether the music should be her favorite hymn or something simpler, my husband was filing documents against my home. I called the county recorder's office. The woman on the phone sounded bored. Yes, ma'am, she said. It was recorded at 7:43 p.m. yesterday. Can you tell me what else has been filed recently on that property? I asked. There was typing. A pause. Ma'am, there's also a power of attorney document uploaded and referenced, she said. Dated last month. My heart stopped. What power of attorney? Limited, she said. For real property. It lists you as the principal, and Evan Rowe as the agent. That's not possible, I whispered. I never signed that. Do you want a certified copy? She asked, still bored. Yes, I said, please. Today. I drove to the recorder's office with my mother's funeral program mock-up sitting on my passenger seat like an accusation. In the lobby, I waited under a portrait of some long-dead official who looked smug. I watched people come and go with their paperwork, their normal lives. When the clerk handed me the copies, I stepped to the side and flipped through. And there it was, my name typed at the top, my address, my signature, a notary stamp, dated 4 weeks ago, the same week Mom's diagnosis got worse, the same week I was spending every spare hour at her house, the same week Evan said, "Don't worry about bills, I'll handle the mail." He hadn't handled the mail, he'd handled me. I felt a dizzy rush, like the room was tilting. The clerk glanced at me. "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded because I couldn't trust my mouth. I walked out with those papers and sat in my car, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. I kept thinking of my mother's face when she said, years ago, "Never let a man make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." I hadn't listened enough. I called my friend Marisol, my mother's neighbor, the one who'd been bringing casseroles and quiet strength since the hospice days. She answered and immediately said, "Honey, how are you holding up?" I almost laughed. I almost sobbed. "I need you," I said. "Can you come over?" 20 minutes later, she sat across from me at Mom's kitchen table, reading the documents slowly, her forehead creased. "That's a power of attorney," she said, voice low. "He can do a lot with this." "I didn't sign it," I said. "I swear." "I believe you," she said. "But believing you won't stop him if he's already moving." I swallowed. "Why now? Why during this?" Marisol's eyes softened. "Because you're distracted," she said. "Because he thinks you're weak right now." That word again. Weak. I felt my jaw tighten. "What do I do?" I asked. Marisol didn't hesitate. "You call an attorney," she said. "Today." I found a local real estate litigation attorney with a reputation for being relentless. Her name was Tessa Lang. She had silver hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of calm that made you feel like you could survive a hurricane. When I explained, she didn't blink. "Your husband filed a forged POA," she said, tapping the papers, "and a notice of interest. That's not just a divorce tactic, that's fraud." My voice cracked. "Can he take my house?" Tessa looked at me, and her tone was blunt in the way truth usually is. "He can create enough chaos that you lose leverage," she said. "He can try to encumber the title, borrow against it, or force you to spend money untangling it. The longer it sits, the more dangerous it gets." I wiped my cheeks with my sleeve. "My mother's funeral is in 3 days. Tessa's eyes softened for a split second. "Then we move fast," she said. "We file an emergency affidavit of forgery. We put the world on notice that those documents are disputed, and we get a restraining order if he's actively trying to transfer title or borrow." My throat tightened. "How do I prove it's forged?" Tessa lifted one page and pointed to the notary stamp. "This notary," she said. "We start there. Notaries keep logs. If he lied to a notary, or used a shady one, it will show." I stared at the stamp. I'd never noticed how a small circle of ink could hold so much power. Tessa leaned forward. "Claire," she said, "listen to me. He chose this timing for a reason. He wants you overwhelmed. He wants you to miss a deadline. He wants you too tired to fight." My hands curled into fists under the table. "I'm not," I whispered. Tessa nodded once. "Good," she said. "Because here's what we do. Today." That afternoon, while I was supposed to be picking out a photo for my mother's memorial board, I was signing an affidavit swearing under penalty of perjury that I had not executed any power of attorney for Evan. I was giving Tessa every signature sample I could find. Old tax returns, my passport, the back of checks. I was watching a process server on speakerphone confirm he could deliver papers to Evan's office by end of day, and I was trying so hard not to think about the fact that my husband was sitting somewhere right now, pretending to care, while he moved pieces around on a board I hadn't known we were playing on. That night, Evan showed up at my mother's house with flowers, white lilies, the kind people bring to funerals. He stood on the porch, face drawn into the right kind of sadness. "Claire," he said softly, holding the bouquet out like an offering, "I'm so sorry." For a second, my body reacted out of habit. My shoulders softened, my eyes burned. Then I remembered the documents in my bag. I remembered his voice saying, "Arrangements." I didn't take the flowers. "Why did you file a power of attorney in my name?" I asked, blunt. His eyes flickered, just a quick flash of irritation before he smoothed it. "I didn't file anything," he said. "You're confused." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "I have certified copies," I said. "Don't do that." He stepped closer, lowering his voice like we were sharing something intimate. "Claire, you're grieving," he said. "You're looking for something to blame." I felt my hands shake, but my voice stayed steady. "I'm blaming the person who forged my signature," I said. "So yes, I'm blaming you." His expression tightened. He glanced over my shoulder into the house, like he wanted to see if anyone else was there. "You're making a scene," he said. "This is my mother's house," I said. "You don't get to tell me what a scene is." He exhaled, and the mask slipped for a second. "You think you can lock me out of everything?" he said quietly. "After everything I've done for you?" I stared at him. Everything he'd done? He meant the little favors he did loudly, the errands he mentioned to friends, the times he paid for dinner with my card and called it taking care of things. I didn't answer. Evan's eyes hardened. "You need to come home," he said. "People are coming. We have to present a united front." "People," I repeated. He nodded. "My parents," he said. "They're flying in tomorrow." My stomach tightened. "Why?" I asked. "For the funeral," he said, like it was obvious. "They loved your mother." That was a lie so bold I almost admired it. His mother had visited my mom twice in 10 years. Both times she complained about the neighborhood. I felt the shape of his plan again. He wasn't bringing them for my mother. He was bringing witnesses. He was bringing pressure. I looked at him and said, "You can come to the funeral, but you're not welcome in this house tonight." Evan's mouth tightened. "You can't do that," he said. "I just did," I replied. His eyes narrowed and his voice dropped. "If you keep pushing," he said, "you're going to regret it." My skin prickled. "Is that a threat?" I asked. He smiled then, small, cold. "It's advice," he said. Then he placed the lilies on the porch rail like a prop, turned, and walked to his car. As he drove away, my phone buzzed again. An email notification from a bank I didn't recognize. Subject line, "Your home equity application." My hands went numb. Marisol was in the kitchen when I walked in. She took one look at my face and said, "What?" I held up my phone. "He's trying to take out a loan," I whispered. "Against my house." Marisol's jaw clenched. "Call your attorney," she said. I did. Tessa answered even though it was after hours. When I read her the subject line, she didn't sound surprised. "That's the move," she said. "He files the POA, then he uses it to borrow. Quick cash. Leaves you with debt. And if you fight, he says you authorized it." My throat tightened. "What do I do?" "You freeze it," she said. "We send a notice to every major lender we can identify. We file a fraud alert. And tomorrow morning, first thing, we go to the bank." I stared out the window at my mother's dark yard. My mother was gone, and my husband was trying to turn my grief into his leverage. I whispered. "He picked the week of the funeral." Tessa's voice was firm. "Then we picked the week to stop him," she said. Wednesday came with sunlight that felt offensive. Bright and cheerful on the kind of day your world should be allowed to stay dim. I met Tessa at a downtown branch of First Meridian before the doors even opened. My black funeral clothes suddenly looked like business attire next to her crisp blazer and the legal folder tucked under her arm. When the manager finally let us into his office, he tried to smile like this was routine. "Mrs. Rowe," he said, glancing at the screen. "There's an application, yes. It was started online. We haven't funded anything." My chest loosened, barely. Tessa slid my affidavit across the desk. "This property owner disputes any authority granted to Evan Rowe," she said. "And we have a recorded notice filed with the county. Any disbursement made under this purported power of attorney will be treated as willful negligence." The manager's smile died. He cleared his throat. "We'll put a hold," he said quickly. "We'll flag the file." I leaned forward. "Who started it?" I asked. He hesitated, then turned his monitor slightly so I could see. An email address I recognized, Evans, and beneath it, a scanned copy of my driver's license. My stomach rolled. I didn't send that," I said. Tessa's eyes sharpened. "How did he upload her ID?" she asked. The manager looked uncomfortable. "It was attached to the application. Attached. Like a casual document. Like my identity was just a tool." I left the bank with my hands shaking and my phone clutched tight. Outside, traffic moved like nothing had changed. People carried coffee. People laughed. I wanted to scream at them that some of us were standing on the edge of a cliff and everyone else was just walking by. Back at my mother's house, the funeral home called to confirm the flowers. The pastor called to confirm the order of service. My aunt called to ask if we were serving potato salad or macaroni. Normal grief logistics. And in the cracks between those calls, I watched Tessa's emails populate my inbox. Letters to lenders, notices to the recorder, a draft of an emergency petition for an injunction. My mother's death had turned my life into a stack of papers. At noon, Evan's parents arrived. They came in like a storm that had been invited. His mother, Diane, stepped out of the rental car first. She wore a pearl necklace and sunglasses, despite the weak winter sun. His father, Leonard, followed with a carry-on, and the expression of a man who believed the world owed him a certain kind of respect. Evan climbed out of the driver's seat behind them, as if he'd picked them up from the airport, and personally delivered them to my doorstep, like proof of his devotion. I opened the front door before they could knock, because I refused to let them think they had the power to summon me. Diane's mouth pulled into a sympathetic line. "Claire," she said, arms out. "Oh, honey, we were just devastated." I didn't move. Leonard nodded once. "Sorry for your loss," he said, like he was checking off a task. Evan stepped forward, eyes soft, playing the grieving husband. "Can we come in?" he asked quietly. My heart thudded. The house behind me still smelled like Mom's soap. Her pictures still lined the hallway. It felt like a sanctuary. And here they were trying to step into it, like they owned space in my grief. "No," I said. Diane blinked. "No?" "I'm not hosting," I replied. "The funeral is tomorrow. You can go to the hotel." Evan's jaw tightened. "Claire," he warned under his breath. Diane's eyes narrowed. "This is your husband," she said, voice sharpening. "You don't get to shut him out." I held her gaze. "This is my mother's house," I said. "And you don't get to tell me what I get to do." Leonard huffed a humorless laugh. Unbelievable. Evan took a step closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Stop," he whispered. "You're embarrassing me." I looked at him, and something cold settled into place. This wasn't about my mother. This was about control. I stepped aside just enough to close the door without slamming it. The click of the lock was loud in the quiet street. I leaned my forehead against the wood for a second, breathing through the tremor in my body. Then my phone buzzed again. Text from Evan. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. My stomach clenched. Another buzz. An email this time. From a title company. Subject, request for closing documents. I felt the blood drain from my face. Tessa answered on the first ring. They're moving, I said, voice thin. A title company just emailed me. Tessa didn't waste time with comfort. Forward it, she said. Now. I did, hands shaking. Then I sat at my mother's kitchen table and stared at the obituary draft. My mother's name, her birth date, her death date, the neat, respectful way they reduce a person's whole life into a paragraph. And underneath it, the ugly truth of mine. My husband was trying to close something with my house. While I was writing my mother's obituary, at 3 p.m., Tessa called back. Okay, she said. I found the title company. They're handling a quitclaim transfer. Evan submitted a POA and a spousal interest waiver to claim authority. My chest tightened. To who? I asked. Tessa paused. To a trust, she said. The Rowe Family Trust. For a second, my mind went blank. His family? Not him alone? His parents weren't here for the funeral. They were here for the signing. My voice came out small. Can they do that? Tessa's tone was clipped. They can try. They're relying on speed and intimidation. But here's the good news. The recorder flagged the notice we filed this morning. The trust can't get clear title if the county record shows a dispute. I exhaled shakily. And the bad news? I asked. The bad news, Tessa said, is they'll switch tactics. They'll come for you personally. They'll try to bully you into signing something voluntarily. My stomach turned. Like the lilies on my porch. Like the funeral. Like the family arriving with sympathy masks. They'll do it tomorrow, I whispered, at the funeral. Tessa's voice softened just a fraction. Then we don't let you be alone, she said. I'll be there, and I want you to understand something. Your grief does not remove your rights. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat on the edge of my mother's bed, the bed where she'd once sat me down after my first breakup, and told me, people show you who they are when they think you won't fight back. I thought about Evan's text. Easy way or hard way. I thought about the Rowe Family Trust. I thought about the notary stamp. And in the dark, in the quiet, I realized something that made my throat tighten. Evan hadn't just forged my signature. He had rehearsed this. He had practiced being close enough to learn my loops and slants. Close enough to steal my ID. Close enough to watch my routines, my passwords, my habits. He had married me, and he had studied me. Thursday morning, the day of the funeral, I dressed slowly. Black dress, black coat. My mother's simple gold cross on a chain. When I stepped into the hallway, I paused in front of her photo. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm trying. Marisol drove with me to the church. Tessa met us in the parking lot, her hair pinned back, her face composed. Evan was already there with his parents, standing near the entrance like they were hosting. He spotted me and walked over, eyes shining with practiced sadness. I'm glad you came, he said, and for a moment, a stranger might have believed him. Diane hugged me, tight, possessive. We're here for you, she murmured into my hair, like an actress delivering a line. I stepped back. The service began. The pastor spoke about love and endurance. People cried softly. Someone sniffled behind me. I watched the closed casket at the front and felt my chest crack open all over again. And then, right after the final hymn, right when people started standing and turning and reaching for tissues. Evan touched my elbow. "Claire," he said gently, "can we talk for a second? Privately." I looked at his face. He had the same expression he used when he wanted something. Soft, reasonable, like I'd be cruel to refuse. Tessa appeared at my side before I could answer. "You can talk to me," she said, calm. Evan's jaw tightened. "This is family," he said. "This is fraud," Tessa replied, equally calm. Diane's eyes flashed. "How dare you?" she snapped, loud enough that a few heads turned. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. In this sacred space, in my mother's funeral. Evan leaned in, voice low. "Not here," he hissed, mask slipping. "Don't make a spectacle." I stared at him and realized he'd chosen this place for that exact reason. Because he assumed I wouldn't fight in front of the pastor. Because he assumed I'd fold to keep the peace. He pulled a folder from his coat pocket. "It's just a form," he said softly, holding it out. "We need it for the estate stuff. Your mom didn't leave everything clean. This helps." My heart pounded. I didn't take it. Tessa extended her hand instead. Evan's eyes darkened. He glanced around at the mourners, the flowers, the sympathetic faces. Then he smiled again. "Claire," he said, raising his voice slightly, "I'm just trying to help. You're overwhelmed. Let me carry this." My hands trembled. And then Diane stepped closer and said, sweet as poison, "Honey, just sign it. Don't make this harder." My vision blurred with tears, but not from grief, from rage. I looked past them to the casket. I imagined my mother watching. And I heard her voice in my memory. Steady. Simple. "Never let a man make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." I lifted my chin. "No," I said. Evan's smile froze. "What?" he said, still pretending. "I'm not signing anything," I repeated louder. "Not today. Not ever." A hush fell in the small cluster of people nearby. Someone stopped mid-sentence. Evan's eyes flickered with panic for half a second. And then he leaned in, voice sharp now. "You don't understand what you're doing," he snapped. "I understand perfectly," I said. Leonard stepped forward, face hard. "You're being irrational," he said. "Your husband has rights." Tessa's voice cut through him, flat and controlled. "Not with forged documents, he doesn't," she said. "Back away." Diane's cheeks flushed red. "This is unbelievable," she hissed, "after everything Evan has sacrificed." Sacrificed. My stomach twisted. Evan's hand tightened on the folder. "Fine," he said through his teeth. "We'll do it the hard way." And then he turned and walked away. And the first thing he did wasn't to comfort anyone. He pulled out his phone, and I knew, with a certainty that made my skin go cold, that the hard way was already in motion. The hard way arrived before sunset. A deputy's cruiser rolled into my mother's driveway while I was still in my black dress, shoes kicked off, feet numb on the living room rug. He didn't look angry. He looked uncomfortable, like he hated the timing almost as much as I did. "Ma'am," he said, holding a folder, "I have an order from the court." Evan had filed for an emergency protective order, claiming I was unstable, erratic, a danger to myself, and that he needed exclusive temporary use of the marital residence. My residence. My house. The deputy's eyes flicked to the framed photo of my mother on the console table, then back to me. "I'm not here to debate it," he said quietly. "You have a hearing tomorrow morning." Marisol swore under her breath behind me. Tessa took the papers from the deputy with 2 fingers, like they were contaminated. When the door shut, the room felt too silent. Evan had escalated, exactly like Tessa predicted. He wasn't just trying to steal title anymore. He was trying to paint me into a corner where I couldn't even stand inside my own home without looking guilty. Tessa scanned the filing, jaw tight. "He's fishing for leverage," she said. "If he gets temporary possession, he can pressure you to settle under stress." I felt dizzy. "Can he do that?" I asked. Tessa looked up. "He can try," she said. "But now, we stop playing defense." She pulled out another folder, thicker, heavier. "I ran a full title history," she said. "Not just the last deed, the whole chain." My heart hammered. "What did you find?" I whispered. Tessa's eyes held mine. "2 years ago," she said, "you transferred the property into the Bennett Living Trust. Remember? When your mom begged you to do estate planning after her friend got stuck in probate?" I blinked hard. I remembered sitting at my mother's kitchen table, signing papers, thinking it was just grown-up housekeeping. A trust, a simple plan, something sensible. Tessa tapped the page. "The house is not legally owned by Claire Rowe as an individual," she said. "It's owned by the trust. And you are the trustee." My mouth went dry. "So, his power of attorney, worthless," Tessa said. "A POA can't authorize him to transfer the trust property unless the trust document allows it. And yours doesn't. It explicitly prohibits delegation of trustee powers." The air in my lungs released in a shaky burst. "That's the twist he didn't see," Tessa added, voice hardening, "because he wasn't actually reading your paperwork. He was counting on intimidation." Marisol let out a sound between laughter and sobbing. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my mother's cross against my skin. Mom had protected me, without even knowing she was doing it. Tessa flipped another page. "And there's more," she said. "I pulled the notary commission. The stamp on that POA belongs to a notary who was disciplined last year for sloppy logs." My stomach tightened again. Tessa leaned closer. "We subpoenaed the log this afternoon," she said. "It shows the notary never met you. The entry lists Claire Rowe, but the ID number is wrong. The signature in the log is not yours, and the witness name is Evan Rowe." My hands started to shake with something that wasn't fear anymore. It was certainty. Tessa sat back. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "we walk into that hearing with 3 things. Proof he lied, proof he forged, and proof he can't touch the house because it's in a trust. Then we ask the judge for sanctions, and we refer it for criminal investigation." Outside, the wind chimes tapped softly in the dark. For the first time all week, I felt the ground come back under my feet. Because Evan thought my mother's funeral made me weak, he didn't realize it also brought the one thing he couldn't manipulate. The paperwork my mother made me sign when I still believed people played fair. Friday morning, courtroom 2. A smelled like old carpet. Evan sat in a navy suit, eyes red enough to look mournful. Diane and Leonard sat behind him, hands folded, faces hard. When the judge called our case, Evan's attorney talked about grief, instability, and a husband trying to keep everyone safe. Then Tessa stood. She set exhibits on the clerk's desk and said, "Your Honor, this is fraud dressed up as a family dispute." The judge's eyebrows lifted. Tessa walked him through the county filing, the forged POA, the attempted home equity application, the title company emails, the notary log, the wrong ID number, the witness line with Evan's name. Evan's attorney tried to interrupt. The judge held up a hand. Evan's face shifted. Disbelief, anger, then fear. When Tessa explained the trust, the judge leaned forward. So the property is owned by the Bennett Living Trust, he said. Yes, Tessa replied, and Mr. Rowe has no authority to transfer or encumber it. The judge looked directly at Evan. Mr. Rowe, he said, did you file documents purporting to act on behalf of your wife? Evan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The judge denied the protective order, granted our injunction, and ordered the forged documents flagged for investigation. He issued a no-contact order and referred Mr. Rowe and the notary to the prosecutor. Outside the courtroom, a detective waited for Evan's statement. His parents tried to shield him, but the hallway had gone quiet, and people stared the way they do when a lie finally collapses. In the hallway, Diane hissed, "You ruined him." I met her eyes. "He ruined himself," I said. That afternoon, I drove home, to my home, and changed the locks while sunlight filled the kitchen. I set my mother's photo on the counter and whispered, "We're okay. Now, finally safe."